Hi y'all, my name's Vanessa Smedley and I'm a painter. Well, today we're going to paint this lovely scene from Greece right here. I'll tell you more about that later, that my friend Lisa sent to me last year. We are going to do as much as possible to simplify a very, very complex architectural subject, and we're going to do that by using line and wash. So, let's do this! Here are the materials for today. You can pause and screenshot that, or they're listed in the description for you. So here is the photo that my friend Lisa took, and it is the Odeon of Herodes Atticus, and it was used as a Roman theater. It basically was used as a venue for music concerts, and it had a capacity of 5,000 seats and was the largest of its time, of course. So we are going to simplify this greatly because you can see there are just rows and rows of seats and just tons and tons of bricks. And I don't want to put in all that detail. No offense, but it would drive me bonkers. So we're going to simplify it. Alright, so I already have my pencil drawing here, and now I'm going to ink this. I'm going to go ahead and use the Faber Castell Pitt Artist Pens, which are super great for using on this watercolor paper. I find that they have a lot smoother of a feel on this paper than the micron pens that I used to use a lot. I mean, I still do use micron pens sometimes because I have a lot of them, but I really kind of prefer these Pitt pens now. But really what I'm doing here is kind of just outlining this in sort of a broken type line. I don't want it to be too perfect and straight. I mean, especially since this is a crumbling building, it would look kind of silly if the lines were too straight. And for some shadow, I'm really just kind of scribbling it in. I'm not using an exact like cross-hatching pattern or anything like that. But also I'm just suggesting a lot of this, especially each little step or seating area. I'm just drawing in some general lines. I'm scribbling in some of this stuff because you really just don't want to put so much detail into this. And then of course in the very background, there's all kinds of buildings, all kinds of trees and all that kind of stuff, but really I'm not going to draw any of that in. That will come with the watercolor. Especially since in the photo, the background is so busy that you almost lose the building itself. I'm really just going to simplify that a whole lot so that it will draw your eye to the building itself. And now I'm done with that, and you want to let your ink dry for probably at least 30 minutes before you start watercoloring, or it might run, which of course would be unpleasant. I'm using my Sennelier paint today, so I'm going to mix up some Cinereous Blue, however you say that, with Ultramarine Deep, and we're just going to add it in the sky here, and I'm going to make it a little bit darker at the top, a little bit lighter towards the horizon line, just like every other sky. And then I'm going to let that dry. And then for the mountains in the background, we're going to use those same two colors, but I'm going to add some Dioxizine Purple in there, and then I'm going to add some Lemon Yellow to gray that down, and we're just going to add that in there very, very lightly into the background. Next, I'm mixing kind of a cool overall color for the background area, and I'm going to start with Payne's Gray, add a little bit of warm sepia into that, some Ultramarine Deep, and then a little bit of Dioxazine Purple. And then I am going to wet the entire background, including inside of all of the little arches. And then I'm going to just drop that color in there. And then I'm going to add some kind of darker splotches with Payne's Gray and the warm sepia and anything else that I think adds a little bit of detail without drawing too much attention to it. And what that's going to do is it's going to kind of suggest all of those buildings and busyness in the background without drawing too much attention away from the building itself. Because we want the building to be in its natural setting, like it doesn't need to be apart from everything else, but we also want to be able to kind of highlight the building itself. And then the fact that I'm making the background quite a bit cooler, and then the building itself is going to be quite a bit warmer, is also going to draw it forward in the eye, and it's going to draw attention to it. There are some trees and greenery, so I'm going to go ahead and grab this forest green, and I'm going to dull that down with a little bit of the warm sepia and probably some of the Payne's Gray. I don't quite remember what I used for this. And then we're just going to drop that in, just wet on wet, into the background here and just let it spread. And then really, honestly, other than making it a little bit darker at the bottom for a little bit of shadow, I'm not going to put any more detail on the trees because again, the trees are not the focus of the painting, the building is. While the background is drying, I'm going to go ahead and mix up my colors for the building itself, and I'm going to start with the warm sepia and then add in some burnt sienna and some Naples Yellow, and then I'm going to basically use the same colors to make a lighter version of that so that we can start with the very lighter parts of it. I've allowed that entire background to dry, and now what I'm doing is coming back in and wetting the entire building. And I'm going to use that lighter version of the color and just basically do a flat wash for now and make sure that it's nice and wet, because I'm going to add some more colors to it in a little bit. So while it's still wet, I'm darkening up kind of this left side because it is a little bit darker. And then I'm deciding that I think I need to go ahead and lift out the area of the seating because it got a little bit dark, and that's a very, very light colored area. So I'm just using a damp brush to lift some of that paint out, and in the archways here at the bottom, because that's a very, very light area. And then I'm going to come back in with my darker color and just kind of splotch it in there. I'm going to splotch in some burnt sienna, some Payne's gray, just whatever color you feel like you want to add to this in order to make it kind of have a stone-like feel. Just lots of variations of color. And then, even though I kind of scribbled down here, I'm going to go ahead and punch up this shadow area with some Payne's gray mix, and I'm going to let that dry at this point. Now that all of that is dry, I am going to come back in here with a Payne's gray mix. I put a little bit of sepia in there to warm it up just a little bit, and then I am going to go ahead and just put this shadow line right here all along this seating area and down at the bottom. And again, I am not making sure every single line is perfect. I am just suggesting all of these different steps here. Then I come back with a slightly darker tone for some shadow areas. And then I come in with a very light mixture of my brown that I used for the building and suggest all of these seating areas here. I've allowed all of that to dry, and I think that the entire face of the building needs to be darker, so I've added some Payne's gray into my brown mixture, and I'm just painting that all along the front face. Anything that is facing to the side, I am leaving that as bright as I can, like the ledges and the side of the building and all of that kind of stuff. Now with these darker niches, I'm going to go ahead and add in some of my darker brown, and anywhere that has a shadow, I'm going to go ahead and darken that up as well because I think it could use some more contrast. I definitely think we need some more of this rock texture because this is a very, very kind of rough textured rocky building. So I'm coming back in with a dark mixture here, and I'm just adding some of that brick type texture. I think we could use a little bit more contrast on this shadow here, so I'm adding a little bit darker Payne's gray there. And then I think we should just dry brush in some more of this texture as well with a nice kind of warmer brown. So I've allowed all of that to dry, and there still is not enough contrast between the building and the background to me, so I'm going to go ahead and darken this up, and I'm also going to warm it up just a little bit. So I'm adding in a little bit more of the burnt sienna to this to warm that up, and a little bit more of the Naples Yellow as well, and that should bring this forward in our eyes, and it should cause a little bit more contrast with the background as well. Then I decided that perhaps I got it just a little bit too dark, so I put down a shop towel over the entire surface and it just lightly dabbed it, and I think that got it to about the right temperature here. I decided I do want to put a little bit of detail into the background to show some of the buildings, and there are a lot of white buildings there. So I'm using this Staedtler White Pen, and I am going to just kind of suggest some of these buildings. And this little line of buildings right here, I'm going to kind of use perspective to make it look like it recedes into the background. But the reason I chose this particular pen is because it doesn't do the world's greatest job of adding white on top of things, so it kind of fades into the background, because I don't want this to be a very stark white. So that's why I didn't choose like a Posca pen or something like that. So I'm adding larger squares and things like that towards the front of the scene, and as I go towards the back, I'm basically just going all the way to tiny little dots in the very distance. And that forces a little bit of perspective. And now we have kind of just a suggestion of what's going on around it, and it adds a little bit of context without drawing too much attention to it. Now that all the color is added and everything is dry, I think some of this line work could be emphasized a little bit more. So I have my 0.7 Pitt pen, and I'm coming back in and I'm making some of these lines thicker, some of them darker. Just adding emphasis to certain areas, and especially the shadow areas, filling that in a little bit more. Now that I have all the major line work in, I'm coming back in with my 0.3 and adding in some of these tiny little cracks in between each rock. I am definitely not adding in every little grout line or every little rock. I'm just suggesting some of that texture because this is a very, very textured building. Now that I'm finished with all the black line work, I'm going to go ahead and bring back in that white pen and add some of the highlights. And that's mainly just on the sides of the building and around the arches and things like that, just adding that extra little sparkle of highlight. And that affords you just a little bit more depth. And here's the finished product, and although we did still have a ton of detail in there, it definitely was not over the top, and we didn't draw in every step or every brick, but we still got this sense of the place. And I do think that we were successful in bringing the building forward and having the background be a secondary part of this, so I think that worked pretty well. And there you have it, a simplified line and wash painting of a lovely subject in Greece. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, share, all of that stuff, because that's how this channel gets to grow. Thanks for watching. I'll see you again in 2 weeks.